The black community is suffering and does not have that. And they have predatory businesses in their community. And when you come to this country, you're conditioned to kind of see each other through the lens of, oh, this is what I heard about them. They don't work. They don't work that hard. They're not this. They're not that. And y nosotros hacemos los trabajos que ni los negros hacen, and all that negative kind of talk.
So something that I saw on Facebook the other day that was shared by many of my family members and just folks that I know, and I didn't know at the time how to just confront them about it, but there was a video and it said the caption of it, and then in big letters across the screen it said Latino lives matter too. And so the entire video was just instances where mainly Black folks were committing acts of violence against Latinos. And so it was like a Latino man who was like a paletero, and he was being robbed by two young Black men. And it was just like, it was extremely, extremely anti-Black. And I was like, why are y'all sharing this? Like, what, you know, and they feel as though they have to take themselves away from, you know, this movement, Black Lives Matter.
People will justify anti-blackness in Latino community saying about colonial legacy, colorism, media representation, and etc., etc. But right now it's 2025. Whoever is a racist on Latino community, whoever still believe in anti-blackness in Latino community, he or she does not want to change, because right now it's 2025 and they have good access to information. They know the Black people, Afro-Latinos, they know we are minorities, they know we have same oppressor, they know. So whoever is still racist in Latino, whoever is still anti-blackness in Latino community and any other community, let me say apart from white, they just want to be ignorant, or they're just racist naturally. Because I've come across racial videos from Latinos who we think they are our friends as Black people. Now, the thing that have made me to talk about this video is because one of my cousins is in the United States and he went to Mexico. We're going to Mexico. He met an Hispanic, and he knows Hispanics. He knows Hispanic. And he told me that this guy were talking shit, man, against him. He told me that, whoa, the things you usually talk on your videos, I encountered them. It was so bad, because I believe in we as Latinos, Asian Americans, Dominicans, and everyone, you know, despite of our color, despite that we may have brown skin, not mean we are the friend to the enemy. We are all under the same oppressor, and we have all gone through the same shit. When we talk about colonial legacy, it's not that you are better, but it's because maybe brown people were given better chances because of their skin brown. But as I said earlier, it is 2025 and it's time to change. I'm happy to see a lot of Latinos coming out and starting to talk about this, having discussion about anti-blackness in their community, and I'm happy for that. And as I always said earlier, the first step is for you to accept that this is happening. After accepting, you talk about it. After talking about it, we change the community, because we are all minority groups and we may need each other fighting injustices that's going on in this state of America. Now, let's go direct to this video. This clip, courtesy of some Latinos here, they are discussing about anti-blackness or anti-blackness in their community. They were in a live somewhere. They talked about anti-blackness, and let's see what they were trying to discuss here, and then we'll come back here and talk about it.
Just real quick, there are many reasons that Blacks and Latinos are intricately linked. However, they're also culprit in systems of Black oppression. Despite our proximity to Black people and the Afro-Latinos in our families internalized, and the racism runs deep in the Latino community. Anti-Blackness is ingrained in our community, and it's also something that is often swept under the rug. We have a long way to break down hundreds of years of white supremacy, but as Latinos, refuse to be active in the Black liberation movement is to deny ourselves as Latinos as an ally that is necessary but not mandatory in the fight for our collective freedom, for immigration reform and community justice. So with that, if you guys want to start off, just, kind of letting us know how you feel as though why there's such a disconnect between Blacks and Latinos. if anyone had any personal stories or situations that may have occurred in which, you felt like you had to defend, obviously, your friends of color in situations, and may even feel uncomfortable at the same time because it's like, hey, it's not even really my fight. So why bother,
Yeah.
I can get involved.
Yeah, I can kind of start. So something that I saw on Facebook the other day that was shared by many of my family members and just folks that I know, and I didn't know at the time how to just confront them about it, but there was a video and it said the caption of it, and then in big letters across the screen it said Latino lives matter too. And so the entire video was just instances where mainly Black folks were committing acts of violence against Latinos. And so it was like a Latino man who was like a paletero, and he was being robbed by two young Black men. And it was just like, it was extremely, extremely anti-Black. And I was like, why are y'all sharing this? Like, what, and they feel as though they have to take themselves away from, this movement, Black Lives Matter, and saying that, they feel as though we are not highlighting that Latino lives matter, which completely takes out Afro Latinos from the equation too. And so there's that binary that you create, that there's Latinos and there's Black folks. And then where is where are Afro Latinos in the mix? But also it was, saying that, trying to make a point by showing a video where you're trying to portray Black folks as violent against Latinos was extremely racist and extremely anti-Black. And so I'm just trying to, have conversations with my family, like, that is not, this movement does not mean that your life is not important, or, Latinos are not experiencing violence, but you trying to say that Black folks are violent against Latinos, and that this movement is, I guess, inherently violent in a way, is extremely anti-Black. And so I think that, being someone who is Chicana, there's a huge history there with folks who try to create as close of a proximity to whiteness as possible. And so, a lot of us, a lot of Chicanos, we have, I just read something where, the term like Viva la Raza and La Raza is very, very anti-Black. That was like a very kind of like almost a white supremacist undertone to that term when you say like the raza is more close to whiteness than Black, right? Like you want to keep your raza as like brown people, right? And like mestizaje and people who are more brown than Black, right? And so it was really interesting reading all of that and trying to unpack that in my own identity. But for me, I think anti-Blackness personally shows up when, a lot of my family, when there's, trying to talk about how we are closer to brown and white, and, being anti-Black against Black folks because we have a long history here, right? So like African, talking about Black folks and saying, racist stuff about Black folks and trying to separate yourselves from Black folks. I've heard that my whole life. And, saying that, really, really anti-Black things amongst each other, and, not ever wanting to own up that that is racist and anti-Black. So I guess for me, that kind of like, I didn't know how to confront that, growing up. It was just something where you're like, oh, okay, my family is really, they don't like Black folks. So, but, as you learn about the history, it's kind of like, you have to be able to confront that and say, well, how can I talk about anti-Blackness with them, right? So for me, it starts with my own family and people who are close to me, I guess. My long-winded answer.
That's awesome. No, you actually brought up a lot of things, and a lot of things you were saying. I didn't want to interrupt you, but would you say then that, like, in Latino household or even in the Latino culture, that racism just is there?
Yeah, but yeah, and David, definitely go ahead. But yeah.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that the foundation of this, I would say, the meeting of the indigenous people of this hemisphere and the kidnap of Africans from the African continent with Caucasian people, it started with the foundational idea being white supremacy. And it's at the root of every system. And, you know, I know that we're talking about it being present in our families, but if it was present in our families, that's because our families were indoctrinated with it. And when you look at how we got to become Latino to begin with, Latino is not necessarily a term that elevates our indigenous ancestry or our African ancestry. It actually practices a form of erasure of it under the guise of Latinidad, that because we speak Spanish, we have a pan-Latino identity, where you and I all have a different experience, maybe in our different countries, or we have a different experience based on our skin tone. I think it's important for us to know that there's a narrative being advanced that Latinos are somehow more anti-Black than other ethnic groups, and that there's a great deal of tension because there's something inherent in our culture. But what's inherent is not our culture. What's inherent is that white supremacy is our experience in this hemisphere as well. And so it was illegal to affirm Blackness. And social mobility in a society, meaning your ability to advance economically, culturally, who you can marry, if you can own land, even down to religion, it really starts there. Because in the Catholic Church, Black people, Africans, were not considered as worthy of salvation. But the indigenous people, they were kind of like a question mark. Mm-hmm. And so they allowed them to be converted into Christianity, but the grade of their social mobility was based upon how much white blood they had. So if we have terms like mejorar la raza, to improve the race, or even down to who can own land and things like that, that becomes ingrained in how we treat each other and how we teach our children. And even down to the most minute thing. How many of us have heard, because colorism is big for us, no tardas mucho para que no oscures, pelo malo and all this other stuff. And even my color, I was taught from a very early age, I was raised knowing that Black lives matter and that the Blackness in me mattered. And my father and mother both taught me that history. But in the Caribbean, you hear that same language, pelo malo, words like prieto, the form of expression when someone uses the word negro is like the insult is the word negro, and then the word that describes it comes after it. Mm-hmm. Este negro de mala sangre,
maldito negro.
All types of terminology that ascribes a negative aspect to Blackness. And most of that came about because of the need for social control of the indigenous people and the enslaved Africans in this continent. But, when you look at our history, see, the most important thing, if I could say tonight, that I want to get across, is that the basis of Black and brown unity is not political. So while we're fighting for Black Lives Matter, when we're fighting for immigrant rights, if we're allowing the electoral cycle to be what forces us to get up and do something about it, then we've already missed the boat. It's not a 4-year, 2-year type thing. We are family of each other as the indigenous people, as the Aboriginal people of the earth. And we had to be taught something to make us hate each other so that we could be controlled by the same enemy. And the same thing is happening today. And for our family that's from Texas, when we look at the Texas history, the Alamo was a war over whiteness. It was a war over the expansion of slave territories because Black people sought refuge in Mexico and were able to escape there. When you even look at some of the history of our quote-unquote civil rights organizations, LULAC's first victory in school desegregation wasn't so that brown children could be accepted in schools. it was so that brown children could be classified as white,
Right.
so that they wouldn't fall under the same the segregation laws that affected black people. So we have to own up to the fact that we have been indoctrinated and accepted the idea that closeness or proximity to whiteness is almost is closeness to God,
Right.
and that closeness to black people is like even down to the terms un salto atrás, like un atraso, like we're taking steps backwards. So when we come into the American dynamic, we fall in line with their stereotypes about black people. And the last point I'm gonna make on this is like this: in America, if you got one drop of black, you're considered black. In Latin America, if you have one drop of white, you're considered not black or not Indian. And so whiteness in Latin America allowed us to deceive ourselves and think we were closer to our oppressor rather than close to each other. And this is the generation that ends all of that.
Yeah, let me jump in on that to give maybe like a real life example that'll that's kind of close to us. So I'll just share like what my ancestry is to kind of help contextualize. My mother is second generation Puerto Rican, born and raised in Milwaukee. So is my stepdad. But my biological father is Jewish, from New York. And if you see me, I could look like anything. You don't really know what I am, but my mother's my mother's father, physically, like I've seen a picture of him, he looks like Dave, right? So, brown skin, like clearly not white, clearly some African features. And, the story I always heard from my grandmother is that, he came from another town to Utuado, and Utuado's a city right in the middle of the island. It's sort of usually seen like phenotypically as a white, like where more white Puerto Ricans live. His name was Juan. So Juan married his wife, who was of sort of Spanish ancestry, looked very white, had 13 children, including my grandfather. Juan made sure that none of his daughters ever brought home anybody that was dark-skinned. My grandfather had the same rule when he moved to Milwaukee for his two daughters. If you bring somebody home that's black, you're excommunicated from this family. My mother's mother was an orphan. She was orphaned when she was really young. And her father was also somebody that was more brown skinned than other folks in the town. When the other kids found out that my grandmother, that was her biological father, they used to make fun of her. Oh, eso es tu papá el negro. And it made her, like, it traumatized her. So on both sides of my mother's lineage, like, they were trained and indoctrinated to hate that part of themselves. That's not like an atypical story. Like, that happens all the time. And I mean, I'm just jumping back on Dave's point. It's colonialism. It's psychologically damaging you to so much extent that carries along for generations and generations and generations.
But how do we stop that? Like, how do we, if we now know that this is what's happening and what's happened to us and what we're experiencing and what we're suffering from, then, how is it that we break away from that, from these generational curses and oppression, or can we? Or is it just ingrained in our culture, in our brains, in our identities?
So, I mean, for me, it's two things. Like, one, it's like knowing those stories and understanding them and understanding why they happen and being able to tie them back to the sort of broader history that David was talking about. Like, when I actually met Dave when I was a freshman in college, and we both, pledged a historically African-American fraternity. And, Dave was the one that really sort of like led me to a lot of that knowledge and a lot of that history. A lot of it I read for myself. I, learned about the history of Puerto Rico. I learned about how women were sterilized, especially Black Puerto Rican women. I learned about, the history of Puerto Rico being a colony of the United States. And then I started to tie that back into those family stories and started to dig deeper and dig deeper and dig deeper. The other thing that I had to do is just realize, like, I've got certain privileges because of my complexion, and I can't run away from that.
Right.
But I also have to, at every step of the way, have those critical conversations with people who maybe share the same culture as me, to be able to say, like, look, this is the truth. Like, this is why this happens. I can be kind and gentle often. I can also be fierce on occasion, but like, it's sort of bringing folks along and constantly exploring, and also exploring like who I am, like knowing that I've always got like stuff I got to work on too, and unlearning all of that stuff. And I mean, I think the other piece is like when you're in rooms where there's power, like saying something, no matter how uncomfortable that is going to be, no matter how much risk you might put yourself at, no matter how much you might lose out on some resources by saying it, like if you get into situations where you gain power to be able to like move things in the room, like you better move things, and don't be scared because you want to like maintain a certain relationship. I mean, you can do it gently, you can do it subtly, you can finesse it, but at the same time, you got to be truthful, and you always got to speak truth.
But yeah, I think for me, it's like I'm really tired of being told that I have to say things subtly and gently, but it's also because, I was told the other day that, I was like, bro, really? And like somebody told me the other day that if there's ever a Latino leader, or if there's ever someone who's in an elected capacity that's Latino, you're never supposed to publicly speak out against them. It doesn't matter what they say or what their bad policy is, or, anti-Black, sentiments. It doesn't matter, because I am Latino and they are Latino. That means that we have to support each other in order to move our agenda, like the whatever that means forward, and in order to move Latinos forward. And I think that is, am I allowed to swear on here? I'm sorry if there's kids watching, but that's bullshit. Like I have always been told that my whole life, that you have to move quietly, you can't speak out, you have there's a certain way to do things. And I think that for me, someone who's just like young, trying to come up, trying to be in an elected capacity one day, I don't want to be silenced anymore. And, and I'm going to use a lot of my voice and energy towards supporting Black folks. And that's just how it goes. And so I think it's really, I don't know. I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't even know what that means. Right. So anyway, yeah.
No, I totally feel you, girl. I totally feel you on that. And I think that for me personally, it was when I was, I don't want to say I was like the ratchet, but it's when I speak the truth, because when Facebook asks me what's on my mind, I want to say what's on my mind. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, because it is what I feel and what I think, and people definitely will come at you and sideways like, oh, why you say that? You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say this because of this or that and the other. And I just say, do. Like, I'm going to do what I have to do and say what I have to do in order to, uplift the human race, really, because I don't want oppression or any racism with any race, you know what I mean? And it's funny because a lot of people then, if they see that you're very pro-Black and just, for the Black Lives Matter, that you are just that and not for anyone else, you know what I mean?
Well, Marty, earlier you asked a question that I think is relevant. We know the root of this, but what is the cure to it? What's the antidote? And I would say for me, it was the knowledge of self. The knowledge of self is from the historical context, and then
when you say that, though, people.
Go ahead. What's that?
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No.
You started
Well,
cut
no,
off.
because that's the big.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm working with the technology too. The knowledge itself represents not only my history, but my connection to the creator. And I do believe that as the original people of the planet, as Black and Indigenous people, we have that, regardless of our mixture, that has happened from our experience, that we're in a unique position, because we represent a multinational people, and we represent people with different roots that go to the origin of who we are as humanity. I think it's important to say and acknowledge, for Latinos to acknowledge that all of our ancestry does trace back to those people, to Africa, as well as to our indigenous roots. And so for me, knowledge of self started with studying my history, studying the Black history of Puerto Rico, which is where my family is from, studying the history of Mexico because I grew up mostly around Mexicans. And so when I saw in there, I learned about people like Emiliano Zapata. I learned about the history of the Mexican people, as well as the indigenous people of Latin America. But it wouldn't have been I wouldn't have looked into that had I not learned the history of my people, primarily from the inspiration of myself. Personally, it was the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan that got me on that route. And so many of us know the history of Malcolm X and how Malcolm X dropped that last name that was his slave master's name. Well, I wasn't born David Muhammad. Muhammad was the name given to me by my teacher, Minister Farrakhan, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And it represented the body of knowledge of history, of cultural identity, of scripture, of those types of things. But deeper than that, it allowed me to learn, since I learned about myself, it allowed me to learn about other people. And so I came to the table as an equal, not as an inferior. It allowed me to exchange ideas with people who disagreed with me, with people who had different viewpoints. It allowed me to interact in a society that I knew was opposed to me, but I had something on the inside of me that made me to know that I had potential and could accomplish and overcome the barriers and the obstacles of this world. And it showed me that excellence would allow me to overcome the stereotypes that were placed upon me, not by assimilating, not by code switching, not by taming my speech, but by making my point unafraid and fearless, like Megan was talking about. And I think when we shed that fear, some of us, we're conditioned to not make eye contact with figures of authority. And, that was the way I was raised. It was like, no me mires en los ojos when, cuando te están regañando, you know what I'm saying? And so we find ourselves in positions of authority, sitting at tables with people like Joe was talking about, where we have to speak truth to power because we have an entire community of people depending on it. And it's when you have that kind of knowledge, you know that you can't betray your ancestors. And when you move forward like that, it's because you have knowledge of your history and it allows you to make a path for your future.
Absolutely. But then, so what do you say to someone who, okay, you say that we need to educate ourselves, but what do you say to someone who is obviously with older generation or may have had a bad experience with, a fellow Black person?
Well, and I've heard that too. It's like, cuando se preocupan los negros para nosotros, you hear that kind of talk, right? Y cuando se acordaban de nosotros, I'll put it like this. When you function in your own self-interest, you respect people who function in their own self-interest. And in Milwaukee, for example, there's a great deal, I would say, of political power that the Black community holds that the Latino community doesn't. I'm not saying that they exercise it, but I'm saying that they have it in ways that Latinos don't. Latinos have economic power in this city. There's one, just Cesar Chavez Drive, you got 97 million, I think, around that's generated on that street. The Black community is suffering and does not have that. And they have predatory businesses in their community. And when you come to this country, you're conditioned to kind of see each other through the lens of, oh, this is what I heard about them. They don't work that hard. They're not this, they're not that. And y nosotros hacemos los trabajos que ni los negros hacen, and all that negative kind of talk. A lot of that is social. How do you confront it? You have to confront it with the truth. And to be quite honest, there's a certain generation that is not worth the effort, straight up. It's really on the young people, and it's on the elders with that kind of knowledge to empower them and to support them and lift them up. And I would say to anybody, young or old, that we have to decolonize. And we have to really undo the mental slavery that most of us are poisoned by, which has us looking at each other through the eyes of our enemy rather than through the eyes of our creator.
Welcome back. Now, as you have heard their discussion, they have talked long. They're talking about some when they started to be anti-blackness, what they have seen in the community, what their community teaches them, and why they are like that, most of them. And I have understood why they were used to continue the legacy of racism. Because all I can say is the white did not do the dirt work. The dirt work were being done by other races towards black people. The dirt works were done by the poor white people, by the middle class white people, by the Asian Americans, by the white Indians, by the white Latinos. So they always see themselves as higher than Africans or higher than black people. And that's not okay. They have been sold this agenda that your skin is all right. Your skin is better than a black skin. And that's why even in China, Japanese, when you walk as a black person, people will be wondering, who is this guy? Because they have never seen someone like this, or whenever they see someone like, black person, hear the stories, and the stories, they're like, God damn, is this the guy we hear? So I think we need to talk about this. I'm so happy for this video that people are talking about it, and the people of their own race, people of Latino community are talking about anti-blackness. I have a video, Indian talking about anti-blackness, and I love it. I love it because that is the first step of healing the nation. Racism, I always say, is the baddest disease. And Latin America being racist because of colonial legacy, like much of the world, I may say this, Latin America was shaped by European colonization, mainly Spanish and Portuguese empire, which brought both the transatlantic slave trade and European racial hierarchies. And these ideologies of white supremacy and racial purity became deeply embedded in Latin Americans' society, just like the USA. So this colonization being there, with the white supremacy ideology being there, I think the brown Latina were told that you are the best, and you need to isolate these black guys, because black people, they are told that black people are inferior, black people may have diseases, black people blah blah blah, a lot of things, a lot of bullshit that were told. And that's why I said this is 2025. You know that black brother can be a good brother to you. In 2025, you know that black brother, you can marry and intermarry within your own communities. In 2025, you have to know that black people have fought for you, so that you can have this some you call the white supremacy, so you can have your brown supremacy. It's because of black people fighting for you. When it comes to the oppression, we all go through the same shit. They don't care whether you are Latino America, white or black Latino, whether you are Asian, whether you are Indian America. They don't care about that shit. They will treat you the same they treat black people. When will you come to understand this? 2030? 2050? When? Because we, our children, when they grow up, we make sure, or we build these stories to them too. We make them go through the same problem too. We make them think they are better than us, better than black people. So we are not solving problems. We are continuing to create problems after problem. We are continuing to create a generation that still they are racist. Why? Because our parents are still treating black people as shit. Our parents are still seeing black people as inferior. Our parents does not tell the children that this is not like this. So when as the children sees your parent mistreating black person or calling black person names, he will grow up calling them names. Many Latin American countries promoted colorism and whitening, a practice of ideology aimed at whitening the population by encouraging European immigration and discouraging African indigenous identities. Lighter skin is often still associated with beauty, intelligence, and success, while darker skin is stigmatized. Why will you say lighter skin, they are knowledgeable, intelligence, they are beautiful? Why will you say that? I have seen a lot of brown kids failing in their schools. But sometimes I think as black people, we're the problem, because we bought it too. When you see a brown kid, when you see a lighter skinned kid, you'll be like, this guy is gonna pass just because of the skin. See how beautiful it is. Because we were sold this rhetoric and we bought it with a lot of money. And it's causing endless pain to us Africans and black people at large. Our kids, dark-skinned kids, they ain't comfortable in the light-skinned schools. They ain't. Because we bought that story with everything we had. It's affecting us. It's like us black people, we are the one again to promoting the racism. We like the one too, we are putting pressure in racism. It's a high time we agree. Black is beautiful. Black people are intelligent. Black people are innovative. Black people are the deal. We cannot continue claiming that it's only light skin that are associated with the beauty and intelligence. No. Where have you seen that? Where have you seen that? See the black Americans good in music. They're black, dark-skinned, most of them. Black Americans excelling the exams, dark-skinned. Excelling in sport, dark-skinned. Innovative, dark-skinned. Who told you that lighter skin is associated? The melanin of lighter does not associate itself with brain. It was pure lie. And 2025, we need to know that's also, or they are all lies. Now, media representation has played pivotal mode on engaging on this issue or creating false awareness. Latin American media, telenovela, movies, news often underrepresent stereotypes of Afro-Latinos. We don't see black Latinos, Afro-Latinos representing news on their television. We don't see them playing this telenovela. We don't see them. And that's why when I was growing up, I always believe, or I only believe that Mexicans are white people, because I was seeing this video, I see a storm over paradise. I see these videos, I only see brown people. And those time I was thinking they are white people. So I thought Mexico is only for white people. I never knew. So they don't promote, they undermine. They underrepresent the black people in the community. Or when they are given a role, they are given a role of criminals, servant, and comedic relief. So this shaped how people view blackness in society. It shapes how the children they are growing, they view. I had a video yesterday, a white lady was saying that she only thought black people as working for them, to serve them. She was only taught that black people, they ain't enough for them. So we need to understand this. Blackness is beautifulness. And whatever the racial politics US is trying to influence does not have to divide you. Because in the US, Latino immigrant may adapt anti-blackness views. They are prevalent in broader American society, or try to fit into the racial hierarchy by aligning themselves closer to the whiteness than blackness. And aligning yourself to whiteness, you have seen what the problem has created to you right now. The economy is bad because you voted for the whiteness. Economy is bad because you voted for the wrong guy, voted against your own wish, simply because the other guy was being supported with black people, and you cannot associate yourself with black people. You want to associate yourself with whiteness. It's pure to say you sold your soul yourself. You sold the nation. You sold your brothers and sisters. You sold the now immigration law is affecting you, is attacking you. Things are not okay in the United States of America, simply because some few people voted against their own wish, simply because maybe, I may not say it's because of the skin color, but some they did that because of that. Anti-blackness in the communities, we need to wake up and talk about it. I thank God of the professors and doctors who have talked about this, white professors, Latino professors. I thank God when I see an Afro-Latino talking about this, a Latino talking about this. I thank God when I see a white man, white lady talking about racism, because it still remains one of the greatest enemy to the black community or black fraternity. We can deal with discrimination, that job, low wage, but dealing with racism is one of a kind, because it may cause mental. You cannot do away with your blackness, your dark skin. You can obviously get another job that pays well, or you can work multiple jobs so that you can get enough money, but you cannot remove your blackness. And when you get that so much pressure, you find some people are going to whiten themselves using whitening creams so that they can become white, so that they can get jobs. Because in some communities, you can't, if you are dark skin, you can't get opportunities, you can't get roles, you can't get model roles, you can't get anywhere if you are dark skin. So the pressure of racism has been so much towards like the generation that's growing up being destigmatized due to their color. We need to wake up as black people, and we need to appreciate our blackness. And the only reason we are being discriminated or we are being seen as inferiors is because they understand and they know we are great, because we worked on their farms. We are energetic. They know that. So they will continue to make us look inferior so that we can continue to work for them. The only people who can work well for them is black people. The only people who can innovate is black people. Only people who can love you is black people. They know. So the only they're trying to see the only reason or the only way they can make us continue doing those kind of weird things or working for them or being so much respectful to them is to continue stepping on us so that we can continue bowing on them. Tell me what you think on the comment section about this video. Until next episode, peace out.